Welcome to another edition, a bonus edition of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'm your host, Gazette Hawkeyes reporter, John Steppe. I am excited to be joined by our Des Moines bureau chief, Erin Murphy. Erin, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, good to be here, John.
So it's been an interesting week. I think probably as pretty much everybody tuning in knows, Iowa and Iowa State both have athletes who are alleged to have participated in online sports wagering. Of course, alleged is the key word here. Investigation's just beginning. But Erin, you've been tracking this down on the state government side of things. What's kind of the process here between the Iowa DCI, the Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission, about how this is going to go?
Yeah, so those you mentioned the two state agencies that are directly involved now, and one even maybe a little more than the other. The Racing and Gaming Commission, I'll start there. That's the group that sort of oversees gambling in the state, and that includes sports betting now. And what they're doing is, and we've spoken to the director, the administrator of that agency over the past couple of days, Brian Arilko. And what he told us is their role is to basically keep an eye on gambling in the state and watch for troubling patterns, anything that might raise a red flag, obviously related specifically to this. And so that's kind of their primary focus right now. The one most interesting thing that they have said about this is they don't see any evidence that would call into question any bets placed on Iowa and ISU games or any or the games themselves. So essentially what they're saying there is they don't see any evidence that if these student athletes have been placing bets, they weren't betting on their own games, the games they were playing. And that's the one thing that they have said that they can rule out at this point anyways. And then you mentioned the other one, the Division of Criminal Investigation. That is the police, so to speak, of this scenario. That they are the state agency that is actively investigating and will enforce this if any state laws are broken. And that's a key distinction to make here too. We have what we're looking at here are potential NCAA violations, and what DCI is doing in Iowa. It's looking to see if any state laws were broken regarding gambling and sports betting regulations.
You bring up a great point with the integrity, I think was the word that they really like to use there, the integrity of those events. So, social media, of course, loves to jump to conclusions, but that certainly signals that something, granted, we don't know much, what we don't know outnumbers what we do know,
right.
But it seems to signal that this isn't necessarily like a point shaving or right. Something like we saw at Alabama baseball, where the coach was allegedly betting or associated with bets on his own games. So the NCAA rules, too, are really like you can't place a $10 bet on a Super Bowl game, even though I don't think I'm going to just throw out random names. These are not people involved necessarily. Like, I don't think Spencer Petras has any inside information on what's going to happen in the Super Bowl, but right. That alone is enough for a violation.
Right. Yeah. And being just in a fantasy sports league and putting money into that, right, would also be a violation. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, it's broad. We've been told that the schools do their best to educate student athletes about this. I think we're in the process of trying to learn more about exactly what that looks like. But yeah, it's very broad. Really restrictive, and what we apparently have here now is a case where whether knowingly or unknowingly. Some student athletes have allegedly violated, at the very least, that NCAA possible. And then, like I said, with DCI's involvement, they're clearly looking at to see if any state laws were broken, and the most likely one there. And again, this isn't. They've been very close to the vest on what they're looking for and haven't told us much. But when you look at the state laws, the most likely things that we expect that they're probably looking at as underage betting, because you have to be 21 to place a sports bet in Iowa, and obviously a large chunk of NCAA student athletes are not yet going to be 21 years old. And you also can't place a wager on behalf of someone else who is not of legal gambling age or status, and that could be something they're potentially looking at here as well.
And important also to kind of distinguish that we're going to have the potential criminal investigation with those agencies that you mentioned. And then the NCAA has their own investigative process. So when the Big Ten made a statement that did not really answer our questions, did not answer them at all, but when they made a statement, they were referencing investigations plural with Iowa. That's because, okay, you have what the state agencies are going to do, and then you have what the NCAA is going to do. And those are two separate processes with two different possible results. One thing you found is the penalty for somebody if it is indeed underage betting, which again is a big if. We don't know that. But what's the penalty for that?
Yeah, and that's a good one to note, because as I had someone on Twitter note that, when you say Division of Criminal Investigation is involved, that could sound kind of spooky, and it is serious. That I don't mean to minimize either, but we're not talking about throwing kids away and locking kids up and throwing away the key here. In fact, it's no jail time at all. It's a fine of up to $645. So if that has happened, as you said, we don't know that has. That's just one of the possible things that DCI may be looking at. If someone has placed a bet as an underage person, it's a fine of up to $645, and that's it.
And probably the other important thing to mention is, as kind of is typical with some of these more bureaucratic processes, we might not have results overnight here. We could be waiting a while until we really know substantially more than we know now. Yeah,
that's a really good point to make. Probably should, if you're really waiting for the next big news on this, you should probably get comfortable. These investigations typically take some time. The NCAA part of it, they have an appeals process. So even if someone is accused of a violation, they could appeal that. So yeah, this will be a drawn out thing. And we'll be fed very small morsels of information as this goes along too. Usually the entities involved are not super and I don't even say that to necessarily to be in a critical way. It's just like a police department that's going through an investigation. They don't tell us everything that they're doing during one of those. It's kind of similar to that. So we won't learn a whole lot for a little bit here, probably.
And a pretty safe bet, no pun intended there, but a pretty safe bet that there's going to be some lawyers involved too in this whole process.
There's always lawyers. The best Twitter follow out there, Andrew Brandt, says there will be lawyers.
Yes, I was thinking of him there when I was saying that.
There you go.
So, Erin, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, John. Interesting topic, and I encourage everybody to stay tuned to the Gazette. We'll keep you up to date best we can.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning into another episode. Until next time, we will talk Hawks later.